Hey guys, so we are driving the 2021 Subaru Ascent. This is my partner's vehicle, and as you can see, we have almost 70,000 miles on this vehicle in the almost 4 years, three, that we've actually had the car. So in this case, let's go ahead and talk about some ownership on this vehicle and how it's been. So just to give you a little bit of an update, of course, right now the vehicle is fine. There have been some odd things that have happened over the last couple years that needed to be repaired on this vehicle. And then also, as of note, right now the battery is going to need to be replaced as it did fail the inspection. And then also with that, the front sway bar end link bushings need to be replaced at some point apparently. So we'll get that done in the near future, but in this regard, right now the car is doing okay. A couple things that have happened over the years, and look at me, I'm driving through Henderson right now, but a couple things that have happened over the years would be that the right front suspension on that side had to be repaired. The shock had failed really early, and so it was causing a nasty banging noise in the right front area of the vehicle going over certain bumps at certain speeds, and it took over 1.5 years for them to catch this. And finally I kind of had my fill with it, and I kind of went in and I was a little bit more aggressive, and also the car started making a lot of noise, and so in that regard we ended up getting the shock system repaired on that side. And it might do it again. There was one instance where there was a bang, but I'm not sure if it was something that was hit, or in this regard if it was just a coincidence, or if actually it's going bad again. But I'm not noticing any suspension play in this vehicle at the moment. The other thing of note here is one major issue I did have with it was there was a leaky oil pressure switch, and in this regard the seal had failed, and the car only had maybe about 30,000 miles when this happened, or actually 20-something thousand miles when this happened. So in this regard that had to be repaired pretty early, and that was kind of a bummer, to be honest with you, because it kind of put a sour taste in my mouth on this car initially. But right now it's doing pretty good, and I'm not noticing any issue with it at all, and we haven't had any leaks in the vehicle for the last 40,000 plus miles. So overall it's done okay. In this regard, the CVT still behaves normally. I am still not a fan of CVTs, but this one is more tolerable. And also, combining a CVT with a turbo usually fares the vehicle a little bit better because you're able to get better torque. But we had a naturally aspirated Outback, or he did, and then I met him. And then, of course, that was a CVT as well, and that one was arguably a lot different in terms of its responsiveness. So this is much better. In terms of the engine, it's done pretty good. We did some maintenance on it, did spark plugs and such to make sure that this car is running as long as it can. Fuel mileage is not great. I will admit you have to be really light on it, and on the freeway it's fine, but in the city, when you're, of course, driving around, that's where, unfortunately, you tend to suck down a lot more fuel, especially if you're a little bit harder on the gas, because when you have, like, the turbo system and such can use extra fuel for various purposes. So it's not very efficient in the city. I wouldn't expect it to be, but if you're lighter on the throttle, you may get a little bit more out of it per gallon. In this regard, the infotainment system is a little finicky. Now, I haven't gotten it washed yet because it just rained, but in this case, the infotainment system can be a little finicky in this model. I noticed in the Outback that we had before as well, it was a little finicky, but it does okay. Just sometimes for some reason it likes to not connect to Apple CarPlay, but it hasn't given me an issue today, and maybe it reset itself and so on and so forth, and maybe there was a system update that needed to be done. Interior wise, I mean, again, it's not very clean right now, but it's held up pretty well. It's made of good aging materials. For some apparent reason, I'm not sure if this is just him hitting this, but the A-pillar has a few scratches on it. But I noticed that the plastic trims, after a certain amount of time, they just start to peel, and I have a feeling that's what's happening up there. But otherwise, it doesn't affect the drivability of the car. My Mazda got its first battle wound with interior scratch, so things just happen. It's not a big deal, especially if you intend on keeping the car a little bit longer. All the systems though I really like in this vehicle. So the one thing I will say is I love the adaptive cruise in this over my Mazda CX-50. The Mazda CX-50, whenever you're switching lanes, it tends to want to kind of send you out the gate at full throttle to get you back up to speed. This one's a little bit more gentle in its approach, and I noticed the adaptive cruise is a lot smoother. The lane keeping assist, however, in this car is terrible. It will warn you to stay in your lane, jerk the wheel to the lane over, and then tell you your hands are not on the wheel, and then turn the system off. And so it's really, for one, not very fine-tuned, and it's something that I personally am not like a huge fan of. But I mean, you know, it's one of those where every system's a little bit different. My Hyundai's lane keeping assist was great, but at times it still had its faults as well. Blind spot monitoring in this is very subtle, it's good, and additionally with that, the other safety features in here work phenomenally. We've tested out the automatic front braking multiple times in traffic, not by purpose, or not on purpose, but you know, accidents do happen, and well, this car is still accident free, knock on wood, but yeah, front braking really works in this vehicle. I did go through a set of front brakes on this vehicle already, but that was at around at like 55,000 miles. Granted, take this with a grain of salt. Living in Las Vegas is going to require a lot of stop and go traffic. And then with the amount of people that are moving here, traffic on the freeway is much worse. So 55,000 miles on a vehicle, for one, this heavy, but two, when you're in constant stop and go traffic, and then additionally also, my partner's a little bit harder on the brakes. It's one of those where this car really did a decent job in terms of keeping those brakes intact. And even then, we're only on the second set of brakes, approaching 70,000 miles, and they passed inspection and did great. So really good there in terms of brake wear. We don't necessarily notice a lot in this car, but you know, it can happen. Some people are just a little bit harder on their brakes, but this one looks like our driving habits are helping us here. In terms of road noise, it's not bad. Road noise is not as loud as like a Honda or even my Mazda, but you know, there's still a little bit there. The tires that we picked on it, I do have performance tires on here, the Michelin Performance. So sometimes they can be a little louder, but it's not intrusive by any means. I also love the fact that there's storage through here. We have a lot of straws for our coffee. We tend to go to Dutch Bros and Starbucks a lot, so we tend to accumulate straws and stickers. We don't put them on the car though, because I would freak out. But yeah, the only other thing that's happened is this window regulator needed to be replaced. But yeah, otherwise, I mean, like I said, it drives phenomenally. It does a really good job, easy to maneuver. And if you have kids, you know, you can fit everybody in here comfortably. We prefer the captain's chairs just because, of course, where you have more adults in this instance, and the captain's chairs can be a lot more comfortable. But even if you did a bench seat, it's not unreasonable in terms of room in here. So it does a pretty decent job. So with that, folks, I will go ahead and let you guys go for now. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send a message, and we'll talk soon. Have a good one.